All right, hi, good people. Dr. V here. And I'm recording all of these because I don't know exactly when they're going to come out. So I'm recording all of these the last week of March. So today is actually March 25th. And I don't know how many I'm going to record today, but I felt motivated and moved and inspired, divine downloads to record. I don't think I think I've talked about things I'm going to talk about like indirectly, but I don't think I've actually sat down and about them in isolated events. Like, to be honest, I feel things coming up right now as I just wrote a date on my little notepad. So I'll know the sequence that I've already discussed topics. And it's like, oh my gosh. But this morning I had a great meditation. I did a meditation by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And it's interesting. And I'm just going to tell you all the real behind this because if you don't know, I am a certified and credentialed transformational life coach. This is the new season that I am in. And people often wonder, why do I lead with certified and credential? Is because I know the type of people I deal with. You know, there's still a crew out there that likes credentials and wants to know that you're trained. And also it's a reminder of me, like, you've been trained in a lot of different areas. You have experience, you have actual knowledge. So that is for really also for me too. And then I just liked it, certified credential coach, you know. You got to set yourself apart out here in these streets. But I was sitting there and I was like, okay, I'm feeling a type of way. You know, I can't see myself in the future, and that's the problem. And I remember that same feeling when I knew that my mother wasn't going to be around to see my kids grow up. Now, I don't have any children at the time of this recording, and it's been 11 years since my mom passed, but I knew earlier on, for some reason, somehow, she wasn't going to be around. I didn't know. And then, of course, now I know. So I started to get a little nervous, like, whoa, does this mean I'm about to be out? Jesus trying to check me out? And so I prayed to God and I was like, I don't know what this feeling is. Like, you've given me all of these goals and dreams, like on paper, like the vision, but I can't see it. You know, of course, like if I'm visualizing, I can see the actual thing. So, for example, a certain type of car, I was like, okay, I can see myself in that, or a certain type of house. I can see that me being on stage in a uh, in front of a certain number of people. I can see that in the visualization because I can put myself there. But to see myself in the future, and I hope that's making sense for you all to see myself there. And so I did this meditation, and I felt like it was an answer to what I prayed to God. And I believe God answered that quickly. And sometimes, you know, your lessons may not come where you want them. So I did the meditation to get myself back in that state. And I'll just tell you the secret of what it was. It was getting back to joy and putting your body in this state of joy. Now, whatever, that was just my word, and all the scriptures that I read up, you know, after that was like joy, joy. And I was like, okay, I got the message. So I'm not saying that, you know, joy might be your answer, but that's what came up for me. So then I got into this thing and God was like, okay, now do what I told you to do. And I was like, oh yeah, talk about those things. So again, I don't know exactly when I'm going to record these. If you're listening, it's probably because I decided to go ahead and make this like the podcast version. And why at first I was like, well, why are you going to put it on YouTube if you're not going to really like show your face and it's a podcast version? But I don't know. Sometimes I just like listening to the people I don't even watch anyway. But this was more for me. And I'm just telling y'all all being honest because it's all about, you know, uploading your life, confronting things, coaching, get the barrier out of the way because I was like, okay, if I'm going to produce these series, I want to either make sure I change clothes or make sure I have my makeup done, you know, all the things. And I knew that was going to stop me. Not saying that I can't show up how I'm showing up now, but I just like no excuses. So I was like, if you don't like the way things are showing up, you don't want to sit here and start thinking about, gosh, you're still wearing that same outfit, then just do a podcast style, you know, put the cover over the whole video. All right. So I don't think I'll do that introduction for every last one of these, but let me get to what I'm going to get to and stop stalling. So these have been called my Stetson Stories. And that's just my former institution. I know some people may say, well, why are you putting it out there? I'm like, a quick Google search of my name. You'll know where I worked before. So it's no secret. And it's nothing against the institution itself. It's just my experience there. If you don't know, I was fired from that job. And honestly, I did not connect that I was fired because I think in my mind, I was already like, I want to leave. And then when the separation happened, if you can't see, I'm doing quotes because that's the word that was used for me. I was like, oh, and it wasn't until like probably this year or late last year that I was like, oh crap, I never got unemployment. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So then I was like, okay, let's take it back. And I'm out here, and I know for a lot of people it was like, oh, you're a coach now? That's what you're doing? I thought you were out here speaking and writing. I was just trying to find my way. And I've been like, I don't want to be a coach. So anti-coach. And it was like, you've been doing this. This is obviously this is where God wants you. Treat it like it's a profession. It is an industry. You were an academic coach back in the early 2000s before it was a thing. So lean into it. And I was like, all right. So I know for some people it's like, oh, you just up and switch. And if people, first thing people quit their jobs or get fired to do something else, they automatically turn to coaching. Well, that wasn't me. I didn't know what the next phase of my life was going to be, but we'll get to that. So in 2016, and I'm sharing this, you all, I process in real time. I try to make these teachable moments, but I think God is like, just talk about it, you know, from an unpolished perspective. So I don't have any actual notes. When I write this up, I may be able to go back and do the highlighted points of the lessons learned, but I'm going to paint a picture of kind of how this trauma in my body like came from, just from what I can remember and looking back. So the year was 2016. Well, let me go back just a little bit. I'm not going to keep taking y'all back down memory lane because I have some of these on video somewhere. But I never wanted to be an actual professor. But I got real humbled when I didn't get a job when I first graduated in 2015. And then it was like, you need to work. And that was, it was kind of like God was like, hello, this is the time for you to do your own thing. But I was like, no, I only know about getting the jobs. And God was like, all right, fine. So I had to go back to the school district to get this job. Did not like it at all. But then it was like, stop pouting, suck it up, buttercup, and do the job. And I did it so well that people started not wanting me to be there. I got moved around to 4 different schools and I was there less than a year. So I was at the district level, but at the district level, because you're not actually in the school, they do partner you with the school because I worked with the school transformation office, which is interesting. Like you got the signs were there, but I was like, no. And so normally they have a coach go out to, or specialist, whatever they call us at the time. Yeah, I think it was, I don't know, go to like 1 or 2 schools, and those are the schools that you work with. My background is mathematics, so I would have been working with the mathematics team at these schools. Well, me, with all the expansion I received during my doctoral program, I couldn't just go back to being a quote unquote regular teacher or leader or whatever. I knew too much. I've seen too much. And so I was like, I just went in guns blazing, blazing. And so I was like, all these things could really be fixed. Like, this is not that hard. But then I learned that there's money in the sickness. So it was like, well, if we quote unquote cure these schools or get them to move, then this office, this department does no longer needs to exist. So we're not going to do too much. And I didn't know that at the time. All of these are like, retrospect. Is that the right word? In hindsight. So anyway, I was so like annoyed, and I was like, I don't want to be here. And I remember I was at a training and I was like applying for jobs, and people were like, Vernita's over there applying for jobs. I'm like, you dang all right I am. I want to be up out this hellhole. And then right then I was convicted, and God was like, seriously? You need to be grateful where you are right now and chill out, because this is it was some of this is why you where you are. And I in that moment I literally changed my attitude and really start showing up not more as a know-it-all, even though I did, but I scaled back and just changed my approach. Now the people were still upset just because I changed. They were like, well, we don't believe you. This is how you came in. But I was like, all right, yeah, been there, done that. Oops, my bad. But then I couldn't expect for them to change like I did. So it was just about me. And then so I all of that I got moved around and people were like, we can't have her here. Even though like my approach was, not cool, but what I did and what I said, it always worked. So my methods were bomb.com. But me personally, and then there were just some people who just didn't vibe with me at all. And that was cool. But anyway, once I changed my attitude, I literally got a job to be a professor because I was like, okay, I surrender, I yield. I'll go ahead and be this professor now, even though I didn't want to. All right. And then I was like, okay, you obviously want me to stay in Florida because I was trying to get up out of Florida. So make it make sense, all the things. And I gave him my list of things. And I ended up, after I released a lot of things, and again, I don't have to go into detail about that. It's on the video somewhere. I was like, all right, I landed at this particular school that was 3 counties away from where I live, but it's 45 minutes. So I'm like, oh, 3 counties, but that's still far to me to drive, especially for someone who doesn't really enjoy like commuting. Like I like driving where I want to go, but anyway. So it's 2016, and we all know what happened in 2016. The school where I worked, it was a small town. So I worked at a small liberal arts private university. The whole entire university was probably the size of my high school. And my high school, when I went at the time as a student, 3,500 to 4,000 strong. And that's the university. That was the entire university. Where I went to undergrad, it was probably that number of kids in an isolated like college, so like the College of Education as a whole may have had 3,000 or 4,500 kids. But then you got the College of Education, College of Engineering, the business school, and the school of community, all of those things, right? So colleges and universities are anyway, too technical. All right, reel it back. So it's in a small town. I've always heard this town. I grew up in the state where I am, so I knew of this place. But knowing about a place and actually, in a way, I lived there because that's where I worked for 5 years. So it's very different. I remember going, so I got the job in August. All over the summer, I would go back and forth, and it was like, okay, the people were emailing me. They were nice. They were all did not look like me. And I've been used to that all my life. So it was like, all right, cool. And honestly, I said this before, I never felt a certain type of way in the academic space. Like academics were my safe space until, of course, I got to my doc program, which I talked about that way back. But I was like, all right, I'm over that. I'm doctor now, even playing field, or so I thought. 2016, that's August. I'm coming up and, people already know what's happening with the election, but, not thinking that it's going to go a certain way. And I was going to work. We started school in August. And then I don't remember like the first beginnings, the image that is searing in my mind to why I wrote 2016, because no matter what happened before that, after it was leading up to election, all I know is I'm going down the main road because that was the only way to get to the institution. There were Confederate flags all up and down the main road. So can you imagine having that image in your mind day after day after day, week after week after week, leading up to the election? That's my dog barking. All right, Noah's life. I'll try not to edit. I'll see if I can edit that out, but he was barking while I was talking. So I had to go put him up. But just going through my mind and just seeing that. And I didn't realize the impact that was going to have on me my entire time. And could have been a sign. Like Jesus is this is where you're really sending me, like for real. So it's going up there and seeing that, and then teaching students, and they have the Confederate flag on their laptops and, their jackets and things like that. And if you don't know the history behind the Confederate flag, go look it up. Just quick Google search. And so I I probably was a lot of the students' first Black professor. Now, this is 2016. I'm probably one of their first Black professors. Now, there were other Black professors on the campus, but for some, like, they were like decades older than I was. For the students in this particular air department, and so, yeah, they weren't full time, and it was one, but it's like they may not have had them. Now, and then if they did, I was their first professor of like a content. Okay, let me just go ahead and say it. I was taught mathematics, and then how to learn and teach mathematics. So I knew the content of mathematics, and then so I caught the art and science of teaching mathematics. It's one thing to know math and do the formulas and the theorems and do all of that. It's another thing if you can understand the methods behind why math is the way it is, and how people learn it, and how you can teach it for people. Two different things. I knew them both. So to have someone like me and look the way I look, not only in my skin color, but also age wise. Now, at this time, it's 2023. You can't see what I look like right now, maybe, but you can go back and look at some of my other videos. So if I look young now, imagine what it was back then. So I know that messed up a lot of kids' heads. I did, again, not really knowing at the time, because I was like, I mean, I'm used to this, but maybe they weren't. So I'm seeing all of this, and I remember I had a night class, and I didn't understand why people would get so nervous about me going to this night class. And I didn't know that they treated me, they shouldn't have done this to me. They, as the department, on one day, I had a class. I'll always know the day. It was, I think it was Thursdays I had this class. I had a class from 9 to 12, 9 a.m. to 12 noon. I didn't have another class until 6 p.m. People say, well, or you could just go home. I lived 45 minutes away, but that was 45 minutes on a good day, no traffic. It was already traffic coming in the morning. And then even if I would have left around, let's say 12:30, 1 o'clock, that's like lunchtime traffic to go back in either direction. And then to get back up there on time, on time, if class started at 6, I need to be there at least 30 minutes early. So that means I will have to leave where I was around 4ish something, and that's traffic as well. So I stayed, and I never made it like a thing, like, well, where I live, because I remember one lady who was there, she was pleading me not to work there. So funny. She took me to the side and was like, during my interview time, I was like, do you know what you're getting into? Don't come, don't come. She was a white woman, but she identified that she was Swedish, but that was another story. They did her wrong too. So I knew, like, they always talked about, well, they told her, you chose to stay where you live, you right? So after hearing that from with how they treated her with that, and she had been there way longer than I was, I kept my mouth closed. I never complained about, do you know how far I live? Because honestly, I could have moved there. Now, when nobody go, I sure, huh. Not at all. So I never made it a thing. So I just sucked it up. But I looking back, I could have fought harder. So not only did I have a class at 6 o'clock, it was 6 to 9. And back then it was like, I'm trying to make sure I go by the rules, which is really not like me. I'm a rule follower, but then I'm also a rule breaker. Like, I follow them so I can know the rules so I can break them later. That's just me. And so, but I was like, okay, let me try, get your attitude right. You're here. Let's not make the same mistakes, you and your mouth. And so I was like, okay. And I kept the students from 6 to 9, and then not realizing the danger that I was actually in. Now, I'm not saying that they were, the Klans people were coming up to the school and things like that. All the Klans people don't wear robes. They don't. But I knew that I was protected by God looking back on it, because there's no reason why I should have been out there in these streets and going down the dark roads and things like that to get back home, being up there, not even just being a black person, but just being a female, at the time, coming from, going across there, going across rivers, where anything could have happened. So, and they were out there at night too. They were out there at night too. And I think having the faculty sticker on the back of my vehicle, I think that protected me as well. Of course, God, no doubt about it. But I think that that sticker protected me a lot more than I I recognized at the time, because the flags were there and the people were out in the street going when I was coming in during the daytime, and a lot of them were on the street as I was leaving at night. So that was my first semester being at the institution. And as I'm sitting there, and you see these images, and there was another incident in the same semester, new faculty orientation. And so I've always dressed up. My grandmother instilled that in me. My mom always dressed for work. And I remember when I was teaching in the K-12, I was in my early 20s, and I was over the mathematics department, and it was about 17, 18 teachers, and I'm like 20 something, and everybody else is like older than me or right at the same age I was. And I remember people would come in like from the district office, and they were like, you know what, Vernita, because I wasn't doctor or anything back then, Miss Glenn White, you have like the best dressed department out of all the departments of all the schools that we've seen. So I'm not saying that all of my teachers were like dressing how I was, but it was just something like when they saw me, and again, wasn't even thinking about it, but when they saw me, it was like I came present like dressed up, and I had my heels on and put together. It's like we need to be an example for our students, right? So even if they were wearing jeans and a shirt, it was like the jeans were pressed out a little bit more, or the shirts were, freshened up a little bit more than normal. So I don't want y'all to think that I had the teachers out here like they were in GQ or for it wasn't like that. I think it was just the way they started like straightening up a little bit, you know. And so again, but I brought that to the university. I will wear my heels and do all the things. And so we're at this reception for faculty members with the provost. I think it was the provost there. Was the president? I don't think the president. There's the provost. And it was quote across the street from where my department was. And I will always wear my badge, and I'll get to that. I always wear my badge and my name tag, my badge. And so we're going into, I think it was like a little museum on campus where we had like wine and hors d'oeuvres and things like that. And I was like, man, y'all would have these things when I have these late classes to go to. So I didn't drink any wine, but I did have some food. Did I drink any? I think I did have a glass. Let me stop playing. I think I did. But anyway, so I'm there talking to some people that came into the cohort with me. It was a white guy. He was kind of a little taller than me, really skinny, had glasses. Let me stop describing these people to a T, because people might figure out who I'm talking about. And then it was so he had on like a kind of flannel type shirt, but he had on a sweater, a cardigan. He had on some fitted jeans and little Oxford shoes. And then the other faculty member, she was in the art, so she had like blue hair, not all blue, but it was a little blue in there. She had on her combat boots, like, because she paints and things like that. So, and she's in a studio, so she dressed like that. I remember they're like, hey, Dr. Doc. You gonna get you something? I was like, oh, I shouldn't. They were like, just get you something. You got a class, get your little sip. And I was like, all right. And then I went up to the wait staff and I was like, hey, can I have, such and such or whatever? And this lady, part of the service team, was like, can I see your ID? First of all, I'm in professional clothes, button up collar, slacks, heels. I got the badge, Dr. Vernita Glenn White University name badge. And I was like, my ID for what? And she was like, and she saw the way I looked. And I was like, did you ask them for ID? And then I was like, oh, I said, well, before I jump to conclusion, why are you asking me for my ID? And she's like, oh, because students come in and out. I said, do I look like a student? If anything, they look like students. Like now, of course, my face is young, but my clothes, come on, what students y'all know walking around campus? And that, first of all, that late in the afternoon, trying to be in the faculty reception. Not like that. Students, oh, if I crash faculty events, I'm still looking like a student. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so I was like, oh, so you don't see this big name tag here. You're asking me for ID because you don't think I belong here. Oh, no. And I forgot what I said, but I know like I called her out in that moment and I was like, you know what, let me go to class. And then I did something that wasn't quite right looking back, but I reacted the way I reacted. And then so I got myself and I left it there and I said, now go do your job because I'm about to go do mine. And I know it was wrong. Don't come for me. But in that moment, it was like, okay, I'm going to have to start checking these people. I started checking a little better, but I wasn't used to that. And I was like, are you seriously asking if I belong here? And you tried to clean it up thing, talking about, oh, students just sneak in. That's not true, especially when these two I'm with look like they shouldn't be here. And no judgment against them, but if you're going to be judging, but because they're white and they get to look like however they want to look, yeah. So again, that was part of my first semester there. That same semester, and now these stories are coming back up. I remember my students would be like, well, Dr. Glenn, why do you always wear your name tag? Because none of the other professors wear their name tags. And I was like, and I had to tell them, and I was, oh, that's another thing. My grandmother just called me, so I know she's on her way. So I'm gonna have to pick this up. They were like, well, we know that you're Dr. Glenn White. And I said, I know you all know. I said, but when I go outside of this building and I go across the street, I'm just another black face on this campus. And people don't recognize or they don't want to recognize that I am a faculty member. Or they may assume that I'm just staff. Now, if you don't know the hierarchy in the ivory tower, and yeah, people can say they work at universities, but then it's like, are you a faculty member or are you a staff? And like, what level of staff are you with? And people may not admit that, but it's true. And so then even in the faculty hierarchy, and it was like, were you a professor, a lecturer, associate, uh, assistant, full. It's a lot that goes up in there. But then I had to tell them, I was like, no, everyone doesn't see me as a professor or doctor. And sometimes even with, they were like, but you dress up and everything. And I was like, it doesn't matter to some people. It's like, I shouldn't be here. So at least if I have a badge and they just get a glimpse that it's official with the school crest and logo, and it's like, oh, okay, she not here just to pick up trash or to clean up the whatever. And I'm gonna be honest, just that would be a lot of like a lot of the black faculty. I mean, not the black people that I saw on campus were groundskeepers or working behind, the cafeteria where I barely went in there, but they weren't in the same role. Not to say that they couldn't be. Again, there were some black professors, but not like you would think. And I remember because sometimes I would have to go across the street to teach in the mathematics department, and I would see them like nod their head, and we all have a code that we do, and that made me proud. Looking back, I didn't understand at the time. I was like, yeah, hey, black people, but now that I can remember their faces, it was like, go ahead, my sister. So I think I'm going to end this one here so I can go ahead and call my grandmother back. And while I'm talking with her, I'm pretty sure more things will come up for me to share with you. Thank you for listening with me. If you have any questions or takeaways, put them down in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you, and I'll be back for the next part.